The Horizon's engines hummed at minimal power as Captain Chen guided the vessel through the crystalline debris field surrounding the fifth planet of the Vespera system. Strange formations of iridescent minerals reflected the dying star's light in hypnotic patterns, making navigation treacherous. Lieutenant Patul worked feverishly at the communications array, fine-tuning the optical receptors to better interpret the light-based signals emanating from the planet's surface. "I've almost got it, Captain," Patul said, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Their communication operates on principles similar to our fiber optics, but infinitely more complex. They're not just transmitting data. They're somehow encoding emotional resonance into the light spectrum itself." Science officer Maya Kaminsky floated beside him in the low gravity, her expression a mixture of wonder and concern. "Look at those settlement patterns," she said, pointing to the sensor display. "They're not random. The entire civilization is arranged in a massive crystalline lattice. It's like their cities are one enormous circuit board." Through the view screen, the planet's surface shimmered with countless points of light, some steady, others pulsing in synchronized patterns. The beauty was undeniable, but so was the planet's deteriorating condition. Massive fissures scared the crystalline landscape, venting plumes of multicolored gases into the thin atmosphere. "Stellar analysis confirms what they're telling us," reported Navigator Jackson. "Their sun will transition to a red giant phase within 50 years. The increased radiation will make the planet uninhabitable for their kind within 20. Captain Chen's grip tightened on the command console. "And you're certain they've been transmitting distress signals for over a century?" "Affirmative," Patul confirmed. "Based on their light language archives they're sharing, they've been broadcasting continuously for 173 Earth years. The signals match frequencies used by at least 6 different advanced civilizations that must have passed through this sector." Chen's expression hardened, and not one responded. "There's more," Kaminsky interjected, her voice quiet. "I've been analyzing the spatial anomalies in the system. There are residual energy signatures consistent with advanced FTL propulsion systems. Dozens of vessels have entered this system, scanned it thoroughly, and departed. The most recent was only 7 months ago." The bridge fell silent as the implications settled over the crew. Humanity, barely 50 years into their interstellar exploration, had stumbled upon not just an alien civilization, but evidence of a vast, established galactic community, one that had deliberately ignored a species crying out for help. The silence was broken by the soft chime of the communication array. A complex pattern of light crystallized on the main view screen, shifting and flowing like liquid geometry. The computer's translation matrix processed the signal, rendering it into English text. "We are the Vespera. We see your light. You are unlike the others who came before." The others observed without speaking. They measured without helping. "Are you different? Our world dies. Our children's light will soon fade. We have much to share. We have much to teach. Will you hear our song before it ends?" Captain Chen rose from her chair, standing tall before the view screen. After a moment's reflection, she spoke with quiet determination. "Open a direct channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Then prepare our response to the Vespera." She paused, looking at each member of her bridge crew. Humanity's first official words to an alien civilization should reflect who we truly are. 3 hours later, after intense communication with Earth's leadership, Captain Chen transmitted humanity's response. A simple message encoded in the same light pattern language the Vespera used, carefully crafted with Patul's assistance. "We are humanity. We hear your song. We will not let it end." The United Nations Assembly Hall buzzed with nervous energy as the Vespera delegation prepared to address Earth's leadership. 3 crystalline beings floated in specially designed containment fields, their faceted bodies pulsing with internal light that shifted between deep blues and vibrant purples. Dr. Rivera stood nearby, monitoring the environmental controls that maintained the precise temperature and radiation levels the aliens required. Secretary General Okafor approached the podium, her voice steady despite the historic gravity of the moment. Distinguished representatives, today we welcome the first confirmed extraterrestrial intelligence to Earth. The Vespera have traveled 27 light-years to seek our assistance. I ask that you listen with open minds and open hearts. The Central Vespera delegate, who had taken the name Lumina for easier human communication, floated forward. The containment field hummed softly as it adjusted to the movement. When Lumina spoke, the words came through a translation device that converted their light patterns into sound waves. We thank Earth for its welcome. The voice was melodic, with harmonics that seemed to resonate at multiple frequencies simultaneously. For generations, we watched the stars, hoping for communion with others who navigated the void. When ships finally arrived, we rejoiced. Our joy turned to confusion when they departed without acknowledgement. After the 7th visitation, we captured their communications and learned the truth. The main display activated, showing a 3-dimensional star map that expanded to reveal thousands of inhabited systems connected by transit routes. Earth was nowhere on the map. This is the territory of what they call the Stellar Coalition, 217 spacefaring species in a complex alliance. We learned they have protocols for evaluation and classification of discovered civilizations. Luminous light patterns intensified. We were classified as Category 5, biologically incompatible/resource inefficient. Their directives explicitly forbid formal contact with such species. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Admiral Yamamoto rose from her seat in the military section. These advanced civilizations simply wrote you off. Based on what criteria? The smallest Vespera, introduced as Prism, responded, their light patterns sharp and staccato. Our crystalline biology requires specific radiation wavelengths to maintain consciousness. We process information through light, not electrochemical signals. Their assessment concluded adapting to our needs would require disproportionate resource allocation for minimal strategic benefit. The 3rd Vespera, called Refract, added, when we intercepted their communications, we discovered something surprising. They are aware of Earth but have classified your world as pre-contact/observation only due to your recent development of interstellar capability. By their protocols, formal contact with humanity is scheduled for approximately 30 Earth years from now, once you establish colonies beyond your solar system. The assembly erupted in shocked discussions. Dr. Rivera approached the podium, raising his hands for quiet. Members of the assembly, there's something else you should understand about the Vespera. Their perception of time differs dramatically from ours. What we experience as minutes, they experience as hours. This difference has allowed them to analyze coalition data in ways the coalition themselves cannot. In the short time they've been working with our scientists, they've already improved our quantum computing efficiency by 300%. Secretary General Okafor's expression hardened. So these coalition species judge worth solely on similarity to themselves and potential for exploitation. That is their way, Lumina confirmed, light patterns dimming to a somber blue. When our star began its death cycle, we petitioned passing ships 17 times. Each scan was more thorough than the last, yet each ship departed without response. Admiral Yamamoto stood again. How many of your people remain on your homeworld? 8,300,422, came the precise answer from Prism. Our population has declined 12% since the stellar degradation began. Yamamoto looked directly at Okafor. Madam Secretary, I request immediate authorization to begin mission planning for a full-scale evacuation. Secretary General Okafor surveyed the room. The motion is presented. Those in favor. Hands rose throughout the chamber. First dozens, then hundreds. Within moments, the vote was unanimous. Then it is decided, Okafor declared. Operation Luminous Sanctuary begins now. Lieutenant Sofia Martinez stood on the observation deck of the survey vessel Pathfinder, watching as her team deployed atmospheric analysis drones across the red dwarf system's fourth planet. The world below, temporarily designated Lumina Prime, spun slowly beneath clouds tinged with copper and gold. Mineral composition is promising, reported geologist Hiroshi Tanaka, studying the preliminary readings. High concentrations of the crystalline matrices the Vespera require for their reproductive cycle. The radiation spectra are within 93% of optimal parameters. Martinez nodded, relief washing over her features. They had surveyed 11 potential relocation sites over the past month, each proving insufficient in crucial ways. This planet represented their best hope yet. "What about the ruins?" she asked, gesturing toward the holographic display showing intricate geometric patterns etched across an entire continent. Xenoarchaeologist Dr. Elena Volkov enlarged the image, her eyes bright with excitement. "They're undeniably artificial and share structural similarities with Vespera architecture. Carbon dating of surface materials suggests they're approximately 20,000 years old. So either the Vespera had an ancient colony here," Martinez began, "or they evolved here originally," Volkov finished. "Either way, this could be their ancestral homeworld." The communication array chimed, indicating an incoming transmission from Earth. Admiral Yamamoto's face appeared on the main screen, her expression tight with tension. "Lieutenant, what's your assessment of Lumina Prime? We need to make a decision within 48 hours. Martinez straightened. "Admiral, we may have found more than just a refuge. Preliminary evidence suggests this could be the Vespera evolutionary cradle. Conditions are nearly optimal, and the atmospheric modification required is minimal. We're detecting ruins that—" A proximity alarm interrupted her report. Tactical Officer Lewis swiveled in his chair. "Unknown vessel just dropped out of FTL at the system's edge. Configuration doesn't match any Earth designs." "On screen," ordered Martinez, her hand instinctively moving to the emergency protocols panel. The image shifted to show a sleek, silver craft approaching at tremendous speed. Its hull reflected the starlight in patterns that seemed deliberately choreographed, beautiful but alien. "They're hailing us," Lewis reported. Martinez exchanged a glance with Admiral Yamamoto's image. "First contact with the Coalition," Yamamoto murmured. "Proceed with caution, Lieutenant." "Channel open," Lewis confirmed. A being appeared on screen, humanoid in basic shape, but with iridescent scales covering its face and a crest of feather-like appendages rising from its head. Its eyes were large, solid orbs of gold that seemed to shift and swirl with inner light. "Unidentified vessel." The being spoke in flawless English. "I am Observer Kelleth of the Stellar Coalition Survey Corps. Your presence in this system has not been authorized by Coalition expansion protocols. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose." Martinez took a steadying breath. "This is Lieutenant Sophia Martinez of Earth Vessel Pathfinder. We are conducting a habitability survey for potential colonization." Observer Kelleth's head tilted slightly. "Earth. Your species designation does not appear in my active registry. One moment." The alien's eyes swirled faster as it apparently consulted some internal database. "Ah, Terra. Sol system. Classification. Pre-contact development stage. You have exceeded your authorized exploration range by 412 light-years. We were unaware of any restrictions on our movements," Martinez replied carefully. "We're surveying this planet as a potential new home for the Vespera species, whose star system is failing." The alien's feathery crest flattened against its skull. "The crystalline entities from the Cygnus arm. They were assessed and categorized over 3 centuries ago. Their transition is part of the natural order. Your interference is unprecedented." Admiral Yamamoto leaned into the frame. "Their transition is extinction. Observer Kelleth. We've committed to preventing that outcome." "Fascinating." The alien's voice contained no emotion, merely clinical interest. "No species has ever attempted cross-compatibility resettlement without Coalition oversight. Your efforts are almost certainly doomed to failure." but the attempt itself warrants study. I will observe your proceedings and report to the Central Assessment Bureau." Martinez exchanged glances with her crew, reading their discomfort as plainly as her own. "We didn't ask for permission," she stated firmly, "and we don't require supervision." "Nevertheless," Kelleth replied, "you have both. I look forward to documenting your inevitable failure or your improbable success. Either outcome will provide valuable data for future classification protocols." The United Nations emergency session convened in Geneva beneath stormy skies that matched the mood inside. Observer Talon perched on a specially constructed platform, his avian features impassive as he surveyed the assembled human leaders. Behind him floated a holographic display showing countless worlds categorized by glowing symbols, the Coalition's classification system laid bare. "Your species presents a unique conundrum," Talon said, his voice melodic yet somehow mechanical. "You possess relatively primitive propulsion technology, yet your social cohesion metrics surpass many established Coalition members. Most puzzling is your decision to expend limited resources on non-compatible species rescue." Secretary General Okafor stood at the central podium, her posture unyielding. "Perhaps if you explained your classification system more thoroughly, we might understand your perspective." Talon's feathered crest rippled in what might have been amusement. "Certainly. All sentient life forms are evaluated using the Universal Development Scale." With a graceful motion of his three-fingered hand, the display changed to show a pyramid of categories. Category 1 species demonstrate transcendent technology and energy manipulation. Category 2 species possess established multi-system presence with stable FTL capabilities. Category 3 species, which would include your potential classification, show promising technological trajectory but limited expansion. Talon's golden eyes fixed on Okafor. Categories 4 and 5 are considered observation-only designations. The Vespera fall into Category 5. Biologically specialized life forms with minimal adaptive potential. Dr. Rivera stepped forward, data tablet in hand. "And yet our research with the Vespera has yielded breakthroughs in quantum computing, photonic data storage, and radiation manipulation, all in less than 6 months. Temporary anomalies," Talon dismissed. "Our predictive models encompass millions of potential developmental pathways. The Vespera's crystalline biology represents an evolutionary dead end, incompatible with standard environmental parameters across 97% of habitable worlds." The display shifted again to show hundreds of alien species, some vaguely humanoid, others utterly bizarre. Each bore a Category 5 designation. "These civilizations were also deemed non-viable?" asked Admiral Yamamoto. "Correct. Some evolved in extreme radiation environments. Others require atmospheric compositions toxic to most carbon-based life. Some process information through means incompatible with standard communication protocols." Talon's voice remained clinically detached. "Coalition resources focus on species with optimal interface potential and technological complementarity." "You mean those most like yourselves," Okafor stated flatly. Talon's head tilted. "Efficiency is not prejudice, Secretary General. It is mathematics. Every resource allocation decision impacts millions of worlds." From the back of the chamber, a soft light pulsed as Lumina, the Vespera representative, glided forward in their containment field. "May I address this gathering?" Okafor nodded, and a crystalline being moved to the center of the room. Talon visibly stiffened as the Vespera approached. "Observer Talon speaks of mathematics." Lumina's translated voice rang clear. "Yet the Coalition's equations contain a fundamental error. They measure value only in terms of similarity and immediate utility. They cannot calculate the worth of diversity itself." Luminous facets glowed with increasing intensity. "When your scientists first communicated with us, they did not ask what technologies we could share. They asked how we perceived reality, how our crystalline consciousness experiences existence differently than neural networks. They sought understanding before advantage." The Vespera turned toward Talon. The Coalition has documented 17,000 species, but truly knows none of them. You categorize without comprehending. You observe without seeing. Talon's feathers bristled. Philosophical discussions cannot alter biological realities. Humanity is offered a tremendous opportunity: provisional coalition membership with access to technology centuries beyond your current capabilities. He gestured expansively. All that is required is acknowledgement of established protocols regarding resource allocation priorities. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to Secretary General Okafor. She stood motionless for a long moment, then walked to a side table where a historical display had been prepared. She lifted an aged document encased in preservation field, recognizable to every human in the room. Observer Talon, this is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, created after a global conflict that nearly destroyed our civilization. It states that all beings have inherent dignity and rights, not earned through utility or granted by authority. Her voice grew stronger with each word. We learned this lesson through blood and fire. We will not unlearn it for any price. Captain Chen watched from the bridge of the Genesis as 3 unmarked vessels approached through the swirling dust clouds of Jupiter's upper atmosphere. Their unusual design, organic curves blending with crystalline structures, marked them as definitively non-human. Behind her, the evacuation fleet's 23 ships maintained formation, each vessel retrofitted with hastily adapted Vespera containment fields. Unknown vessels holding position at 1,000 kilometers, reported Lieutenant Commander Paddle. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, including several we shouldn't be able to detect with our current technology. On screen, Chen ordered, tension evident in her voice. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a command center unlike any human design. 3 distinct species occupied the space, one floating in what appeared to be a dense methane atmosphere behind a transparent barrier, another with an insectoid exoskeleton managing crystalline control surfaces, and a third that seemed composed primarily of fluctuating energy patterns contained within a humanoid-shaped field. The methane-breathing entity moved forward. When it spoke, its voice emerged through a translation matrix with harmonic undertones reminiscent of Vespera communication. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Captain Dex of the Novan Collective. These are my allies. Engineer Zilith of the Teleri Hive and Navigator Pulse of the Lumina Consciousness. The being's breathing apparatus emitted soft blue clouds with each word. We've been monitoring Coalition communication channels. Your defiance of their classification protocols has attracted attention. Chen straightened. If you're here to enforce those protocols. Quite the opposite, interrupted the insectoid Zilith, mandibles clicking. We are what your language might call kindred spirits. Each of our species was deemed Category 5 by Coalition assessment. Each of us chose survival over acceptance. The energy being, Pulse, floated closer to the screen, its form shimmering with pulses of light. We have existed in the shadows between Coalition territories for centuries. Captain Chen. Neither acknowledged nor exterminated, merely overlooked. Chen's expression softened with realization. You're offering to help us. Our vessels carry specialized equipment critical to your mission, Dex confirmed. Novan atmospheric processors can stabilize Vespera crystalline structures during FTL transit. Without them, the quantum stress will shatter their consciousness patterns. Engineer Zilith manipulated a crystalline display. We've also mapped the unmonitored transit corridors between Coalition patrol routes. Your current trajectory would intersect 3 automated observation posts. Commander Davidson, Chen's first officer, leaned forward. Why would you risk Coalition censure to assist us? You've clearly managed to survive without drawing their attention. Navigator Pulse's energy form pulsed with colors that somehow conveyed amusement, because in 57,000 cycles of Coalition history, no Category 3 species has ever deliberately chosen to aid a Category 5. Your actions represent a statistical impossibility, a direct challenge to the fundamental logic of their civilization. And added Dex, because the Vespera possess knowledge the Coalition has deliberately suppressed. Their light processing consciousness holds mathematical principles that contradict coalition physics. The Vespera were not abandoned because they were useless. They were isolated because they were dangerous to established coalition control of FTL technology. Before Chen could respond, an emergency signal blared. Lieutenant Santos at the sensor station turned with alarm. "Captain, we're detecting massive stellar flares from Vespera Prime, well beyond projected models. 2 evacuation transports in the system are reporting critical damage." The view screen split to show a devastating image. The Vespera star ejecting massive coronal loops that lashed the inner planets. The crystalline surface of Vespera Prime reflected the deadly radiation in cascading patterns. Dex's breathing quickened. "Your evacuation timeline just collapsed, Captain Chen. Without our assistance, you'll lose half the Vespera population before your fleet even arrives." Chen looked around her bridge at the determined faces of her crew, then back to their unexpected allies. "What do you propose?" Navigator Pulse's energy form expanded. Something the Coalition would never dare attempt. A synchronized transit jump linking all vessels through quantum resonance. The Vespera Elders can create a protective lattice to shield their people, but only if we can synchronize our technologies. "The risk is substantial," warned Dex. "No such attempt has ever been documented." Chen's jaw set with determination. "Neither has the extinction of an entire species on our watch. Prepare your equipment. We jump in 30 minutes. The Genesis observation deck offered a panoramic view of Vespera Prime, its crystalline surface now fracturing under the intense radiation bombardment from its dying star. Captain Rivera stood beside Admiral Zenith, the Coalition commander who had arrived with a flotilla of sleek, impossibly advanced vessels. Zenith's scaled skin reflected the emergency lighting, his compound eyes taking in the evacuation with obvious disbelief. "Your methods are haphazard at best, suicidal at worst," Zenith commented, watching as modified Earth shuttles transported clusters of Vespera to the waiting fleet. Coalition simulations predicted an 87% failure rate for cross-species evacuation attempts of this magnitude. Rivera gestured toward the display showing evacuation progress. "With respect, Admiral, we're currently at 63% completion with minimal casualties. Your simulations failed to account for something." "And what is that?" Zenith's voice carried the faintest hint of genuine curiosity. "Determination," Rivera replied simply. "And cooperation between species your coalition deemed incompatible." Before Zenith could respond, Dr. Jackson Lee burst onto the observation deck, his perpetually disheveled appearance even more chaotic than usual. "Captain, the Elders have made contact. They'd found a way to buy us time." The main view screen activated, showing the crystalline network of Vespera Elders positioned strategically across their planet's surface. Each cluster pulsed with synchronized light patterns, creating intersecting beams that formed a lattice around the planet. "Their channel redirecting the stellar radiation," Lee explained, excitement overwhelming his exhaustion, "acting as living waveguides to disperse the energy. It's the most beautiful piece of physics I've ever witnessed." Zenith moved closer to the display, his professional detachment cracking. "Impossible. No biological entity could manipulate stellar radiation at that scale." "They're not just manipulating it," Lee corrected. "They're harmonizing with it. The mathematical principles are beyond anything in our standard models." A Vespera liaison named Crystal floated forward in their containment field. "The Elders sacrifice themselves to save the younger generations. Each redirection burns away part of their consciousness. They cannot hold this pattern for more than 27 of your hours." Admiral Zenith's posture stiffened. "Your Elders choose extinction for themselves." "They choose continuation for our people," Crystal replied. "Is self-sacrifice not practiced among Coalition species?" The question hung in the air as several junior Coalition officers exchanged glances. One of them, Lieutenant Commander Selen, stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, I request permission to assist with evacuation efforts. My specialty in quantum field harmonics could help stabilize the transport vessels. Before Zenith could respond, 2 more Coalition officers joined Cylon. Then another. Within moments, nearly half of Zenith's command staff had volunteered. Zenith's compound eyes flickered rapidly, a sign of intense internal conflict. Coalition protocols strictly forbid intervention in Category 5 extinction events. Perhaps, Rivera suggested carefully, this is no longer a Category 5 extinction event, but a Category 3 humanitarian mission. After all, humans are undertaking this evacuation, and by your own classification, we're Category 3. Something shifted in Zenith's demeanor. An interesting interpretation of regulatory parameters. He paused, then added, one that would not technically violate my mission directives. Across the observation deck, Dr. Lee had connected his computational matrix to the Vespera communication array. The displays lit up with complex equations flowing in streams of light. "Captain," Lee called out, his voice cracking with excitement. "The Vespera elders are transmitting technical specifications. They've cracked the theoretical problem with our photonic compression fields. If we reconfigure the fleet's quantum resonance chambers based on these principles, we can triple our transport capacity." Rivera turned to Admiral Zenith. "Your coalition may evaluate species based on what they can do for you. We evaluate based on what we can do for each other. Right now, the Vespera are teaching us how to save them. And in doing so, they're advancing our understanding of physics by centuries." Zenith studied the equations flowing across the screen, then touched a communication device on his uniform. "This is Admiral Zenith. Dispatch engineering teams to assist with human evacuation efforts. Classified authorization protocol. Omega-7. Log this as a scientific observation mission." As Coalition and human crews began working together, Rivera noticed Zenith watching the Vespera Elders Light Network with undisguised wonder. "In 50 years with the Coalition," the Admiral said quietly, "I've never witnessed anything like this. Perhaps our assessment protocols require reconsideration." The command center of the Genesis hummed with activity as Captain Chen monitored the evacuation's final phase. Holographic displays showed the remaining Vespera transports racing against time, while the dying star's corona lashed out with increasing violence. The elder Vespera's protective lattice had begun to falter, gaps appearing in the once perfect geometric pattern. 83% evacuation complete, reported Commander Davidson, fatigue evident in his voice after 36 hours without rest. "The last transports are loading now, but the stellar activity has increased by another 40%. Shield integrity on the remaining vessels is dropping." Chen turned to the Vespera elder, who had requested to remain aboard the Genesis. The crystalline being, who called itself Luminos, pulsed with dimming light patterns. "We can hold the barriers for perhaps 2 more hours," Luminous communicated through the translation matrix. "After that, the radiation will overwhelm even our most resilient elders. We need more time," Chen insisted, studying the tactical display. "At current evacuation rates, we'll still have over 1,200 of your people on the surface when the protection fails." The door to the command center slid open as Dr. Maya Kaminsky entered, accompanied by Navigator Pulse of the Lumina Consciousness. The energy being's form flickered with excitement. "Captain, the Vespera elders have shared something remarkable with us," Kaminsky announced, projecting a complex light pattern onto the main display. "This isn't just communication. It's a mathematical formula for manipulating space-time through resonant frequencies." Pulse's energy form expanded. "The Coalition has suppressed this knowledge for centuries. Their entire FTL network relies on technology that creates artificial wormholes, resource-intensive and controlled exclusively by Category 1 species. The Vespera method requires no exotic matter, only precisely calibrated light harmonics." Luminos floated closer to the display. "My ancestors discovered these principles millennia ago, but when the first Coalition scout ships detected our early experiments, they classified our research as dangerous. Each subsequent visitation included detailed scans of our mathematical archives. They weren't ignoring your distress calls." Chen realized, her expression hardening. They were ensuring your knowledge would die with you. Precisely, confirmed Pulse. The Coalition's power structure depends on controlling interstellar transit. A method requiring only light and mathematics would undermine their entire hierarchy. Chen studied the equations flowing across the screen. How does this help us now? We still have people on the surface. Kaminsky's eyes gleamed with possibility. The Vespera elders are proposing something unprecedented. They can't save themselves, but they can channel the star's energy through their crystalline network to create a resonance field, essentially a corridor of stabilized space-time that could allow our remaining ships to bypass normal physics. Could it work? Chen demanded. Pulse's energy form pulsated with caution. Theoretically, yes. Practically, it has never been attempted at this scale. The elders would be channeling the energy of a dying star. Before anyone could respond, the tactical alert sounded. Lieutenant Santos looked up from his station with alarm. Multiple vessels dropping out of FTL at the system edge. Coalition signatures, heavily armed battlecruisers. The communication array activated, revealing Admiral Zenith's stern visage. Behind him stood a council of diverse alien species, their expressions uniformly grave. Captain Chen of Earth Vessel Genesis, Zenith announced formally. The Coalition Supreme Council has deemed your interference in natural extinction processes a threat to galactic order. You are ordered to cease evacuation operations immediately. The knowledge the Vespera possess has been classified as a Category 1 security risk. Chen met his gaze steadily. We've broken no laws we recognize. Admiral, we're saving lives. Something your coalition seems to have forgotten is the purpose of civilization. Your noble sentiments are noted, Zenith replied coldly. However, my orders are clear. Withdraw your vessels, or we will be forced to disable them. The Vespera mathematical principles must not leave this system. The command center fell silent as everyone turned to Captain Chen. She looked from the tactical display, showing the overwhelming coalition force, to the evacuation progress indicator. Thousands of lives still in peril. Admiral, she said finally, I believe we're about to show you exactly what those mathematical principles can do. 1 year after the Vespera evacuation, the New Harmony settlement transformed the Northern Sahara into an improbable oasis of light and life. Crystalline structures rose alongside earthen buildings, their facets capturing the desert sun and redirecting it in prismatic patterns that both decorated and powered the community. Dr. Rivera walked alongside Elder Crystal, one of the few surviving Vespera elders, as delegates from 27 species gathered for the inaugural Convergence Council. When we first came to Earth, we feared we would merely survive. Crystal communicated, light patterns flowing through their translucent form. We never imagined we would thrive. Rivera smiled, watching as human children played alongside juvenile Vespera, the young ones communicating through improvised light games that neither species' adults fully understood. Children adapt faster than we do. They're developing a hybrid language, part verbal, part light-based. Our linguists can barely keep up. They approached the central pavilion, where Secretary General Okafor greeted representatives from the formerly isolated species, the methane-breathing Novans, the insectoid Teleri, the energy-based Lumina, and newer arrivals, the aquatic Meridians, the gravity-manipulating Coriolis, and others who had contacted Earth after news of the Vespera rescue spread through hidden channels. The Coalition Observer Delegation has entered orbit, Okafor informed them quietly. Admiral Zenith is leading them personally. Rivera nodded, unsurprised. After what they witnessed at Vespera Prime, they must have questions. The memory of that final day remained vivid, how the Vespera elders had channeled their dying star's energy through their crystalline network, creating a resonance corridor that allowed the remaining evacuation ships to slip through space-time itself. The Coalition battlecruisers had watched in stunned disbelief as vessels simply disappeared from normal space, reappearing near Earth hours later without using conventional FTL methods. The cost had been immeasurable. The remaining Vespera elders had sacrificed themselves completely, their consciousness patterns dissolving as they maintained the corridor. But their final gift, the complete mathematical principles of resonance physics, now formed the foundation of a new understanding of the universe. The delegation chamber fell silent as Admiral Zenith entered with a small group of coalition scientists. The Admiral's compound eyes swept across the assembled species, lingering on the collaborative technology evident throughout the chamber. When I last encountered humanity, Zenith began formally, I represented the unified will of the Coalition Council. Today, I represent only a faction, those who believe our assessment protocols require fundamental reconsideration. Murmurs spread through the assembly as Zenith continued. For 9,000 cycles, the Coalition has categorized species based on technological development, resource efficiency, and biological compatibility. We believe this system ensured optimal galactic stability. He paused, his scaled skin shifting color slightly. We were incorrect. Secretary General Okafor stepped forward. Admiral, does this represent an official coalition position? The coalition is divided, Zenith admitted. Many cannot accept that their fundamental assumptions about species development might be flawed. Others recognize that the resonance principles demonstrated by the Vespera challenge our entire understanding of physics, principles that would have been lost had your species followed our protocols. From the center of the chamber, Elder Crystal projected a complex light pattern that resolved into a holographic display of interconnected worlds, a new map of galactic relationships based not on hierarchy, but on complementary abilities. The universe does not favor uniformity. Crystal's translated voice rang clear. Evolution across countless worlds has created diversity precisely because different perspectives solve different problems. The coalition sought standardization. We propose harmony, distinct notes creating richer music together than any could alone. Dr. Rivera activated the central display, revealing the prototype resonance drive, humanity's first faster-than-light engine based on Vespera principles. Unlike massive coalition drives, it was elegant and compact, requiring only precisely calibrated light frequencies to function. This technology belongs to no single species, Rivera announced. It was born from the Vespera's understanding of light, refined through human engineering, stabilized with Novan atmospheric techniques, and calibrated using Telluri crystalline mathematics. No one of us could have created it alone. Admiral Zenith moved closer to examine the drive, his scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic reserve. Our models never predicted this level of cross-species innovation. The Coalition Council argued such collaboration was mathematically impossible. Secretary General Okafor smiled slightly. Perhaps that's why we succeeded, Admiral. We never did the math.